Gods in WAKFU are really important to the lore, so I thought I'd just run down some of the basic knowledge that you need to know about them. I'm not going to go into their individual lores, but this is something to keep in mind for the future. Every single race in the world of 12 is an aspect of their god. The gods create their people, and the people believe in them, making them stronger. And from that, the belief system in the gods ends up making the races look the way they do. Every single person who believes in a certain god will reincarnate through that god's version of heaven, which is their divine dimension. And whenever they reincarnate, they have the physical and behavioral aspects of that certain god. Whenever you change your religion, when you reincarnate as a different race. And the main way that you show respect to your god is by following their 10 commandments. Every god has a different set of commandments, like for example the one I'm showing right now is for the Sacrier god. She is a blood god who loves vengeance and blood and death and so on and so forth. So obviously her commandments are based around that, and her race has to follow those. Similar to real world religions, they're in different parts of the world of 12. People have different interpretations of stuff like their behavioral patterns and their designs, which is why certain people from the exact same race can look completely different. Like for example, some people from one race can have wings, some could have horns, and some could have both. Just because people have knowledge of the existence of gods within the franchise does not mean that they each individually met the god for themselves to have an accurate description of what it looks like. Let's take a shift into what the gods do, where they live, and how they function. All the gods live in this place called Inglorium, and they each have their own section of it called Divine Dimensions. Divine Dimensions are not like normal ones since they don't have any idea what dimensions are because they don't exist beyond the material plane, so they just kind of mess around with them. And they ended up just stacking them into alphabetical order because they don't know how dimensions work once again. So it's kind of like giving like an old person a computer. Sometimes the gods do in fact leave and go to the material plane by using stuff like avatars. That's why there's so many demigods running around. Even the goddesses have their own sets of demigods, and no, they do not get pregnant before someone asks. The goddesses within WAKFU are not really goddesses in the traditional sense. Since the gods don't have actual genders, they just transform into men and they just impregnate a woman and then go back to Inglorium, and then they have a demigod child on the material plane. It's quite literally a thing that every single goddess does. But granted, all the gods have their own appreciation for the material plane, whether it be to sleep around or to actually just enjoy the scenery. Like, to be fair, beings like Ozymandias, for example, are the reason why the planets, the suns, and like the galaxies and everything within the universes exist, but he created them specifically so he can conquer multiple universes. The only rule that the gods have is that no god could have a specific planet to themselves for their entire race, because then there would be an disproportionate amount of power, which is exactly why they didn't like the Heliotrope goddess. For this, I can't really blame them. She literally had a planet worth of heliotropes all to herself. Granted, they all died out, but still, it's the principle of it. At the same time though, technically the Heliotrope goddess isn't really a god in the traditional sense, but that's a story for another time. Well, and before anyone gets confused, none of the gods are like really bad in the sense. Like, they're technically just neutral beings who are capable of doing immense good and immense bad, depending on how they're feeling or whoever praises them. To be fair, they're not really evil and more selfish in a way. Like, they're very human in that way, where they kind of help out humanity a lot because of the fact that they rely on humanity. And if they didn't need to help them, they probably wouldn't. And I think this is well shown when Ogress shows up, because Ogress literally takes down all the gods, and then they just kind of move away. They just kind of ignore him, even though Ogress chaos is going on, because they realize not only could they not take him down, but also like they only went down there just because they didn't want to risk him potentially wiping out all their followers, which would remove all their power. But I mean, like, yeah, they only really do stuff when there's something they gain from it, which is pretty selfish. But I mean, sometimes they can stick their neck out because they gain like emotional bonds. But also in general, they act extremely human, which is kind of the main point of their character, because every single race is just a lesser version of them, pretty much. Like they're made in their image. Like every single god is just pretty much an over exaggeration of their race and how they act and speak and etc. Like if you think that Ruel's greedy, meet the Unitrav god. Like this dude is legitimately just Ruel on steroids. That's like kind of the whole point. But yeah, this is pretty much the basic knowledge on the gods. I wasn't getting into any of their lore specifically, but I could do that in the future, but that's a bit complicated. But yeah. Anyways, bye.